The council chamber at Nexus Prime Station buzzed with worried voices. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the massive hall, their various forms casting strange shadows under the bright lights. At the center of attention stood a holographic display showing red markers spreading across a star map like a disease. Captain Taman Kong stood near the back of the human delegation, watching the chaos unfold. His dark uniform was crisp and clean, medals from past conflicts gleaming on his chest. At 45 years old, he had seen enough battles to know when fear was taking hold. And fear was definitely in this room. "The Vrelix Empire has taken another system," announced High Commander Silith, a tall insectoid being with 4 arms. Her voice clicked and whistled through the translator. 3 colonies, 2 million souls, gone in a week. Murmurs of alarm rippled through the chamber. The Vrelix were known for their aggression and their powerful fleet. They had been quiet for decades, but now they were expanding rapidly. No one knew why, and no one seemed able to stop them. Ambassador Vekthar, representing the Draxian Collective, stood up. His scaled body reflected the light as he spoke. "We must form a defensive coalition immediately. Every member species should contribute their fastest and strongest warships." Heads nodded throughout the chamber. Ships were being pledged. The Quellans offered their sleek cruisers that could reach .9 light speed. The Antharians promised their stealth frigates. The Draxians themselves had battleships with energy weapons that could tear through shields like paper. Then the human ambassador stood. Her name was Kiori Han, and she was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Humanity wishes to contribute to the defense." Some beings in the chamber looked surprised. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Council, having joined only 50 years ago. They were seen as enthusiastic but technologically behind the older races. "We offer our newest warship class," Ambassador Han continued. "The UHSN Steadfast is waiting outside the station. Captain Kang will present her specifications." Taman walked forward, trying to ignore the curious stares. He activated his data pad, and the holographic display changed. An image of his ship appeared, rotating slowly. The Steadfast looked nothing like the elegant alien vessels. She was blocky and thick, with heavy armor plating visible even in the image. She looked more like a flying fortress than a modern warship. "The Steadfast is 400 meters long," Taman began in his calm voice. "She carries a crew of 400. Maximum speed is .3 light speed." A laugh echoed through the chamber. Then another. Soon, a ripple of amusement spread among the alien delegates. ".3? Ambassador Vekthar asked, his scaled face showing clear disbelief. "Our cargo haulers move faster than that." More laughter. Taman felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral. Beside him, Commander Yuna Park stood rigid, her hands clenched behind her back. He could sense her anger. "The ship carries 60 railguns, 40 missile tubes, and 24-point defense systems," Taman continued, raising his voice slightly. "Power core output is 3 times standard for a ship this size. Armor thickness is—" "Captain Kang," High Commander Silith interrupted, her tone almost pitying. "We appreciate your enthusiasm, but the Vrelix fleet is fast and deadly. We need ships that can chase them down, outmaneuver them. Your vessel, while I'm sure it's adequate for human standards, is simply too slow for modern warfare." "With respect, Commander," Taman replied, "the Steadfast was built for a specific purpose." "To be a target?" someone called out. More laughter followed. Ambassador Vekthar stood again. "Humans, please. We value your offer, but perhaps your ship would be better suited for patrol duties in safer systems. Let the faster vessels handle the real fighting." The words stung, even though they were said with apparent kindness. Taman looked around the chamber. He saw doubt on every alien face. Some looked amused. Others looked embarrassed for the humans. None looked impressed. "We built her for a purpose," Taman said quietly. "You'll see." The meeting moved on to other topics. The coalition fleet was forming. 20 alien warships would gather at the staging point. The Steadfast was given permission to join them, though several delegates made it clear they expected little from the human contribution. Later that evening, Taman stood in the observation deck of his ship, looking out at the gathering fleet. The alien vessels were beautiful, he had to admit. They were sleek and graceful, their hulls smooth and their engines bright. They looked fast even when standing still. Beside them, the Steadfast looked like an ugly cousin at a family gathering. Commander Yuna found him there. She was 38, brilliant with tactics, and had served with him for 7 years. "The crew heard the transmissions from the council meeting," she said. "Morale is low." "I know," Taman replied. "They're calling us the anchor, saying we'll slow down the whole fleet." Yuna's voice was bitter. "Some of the alien crews are taking bets on how long we'll last in actual combat." Taman was quiet for a moment, watching a sleek Quellan cruiser glide past. It moved with such grace that it barely seemed to touch space at all. "They built ships to win races," he finally said. "We build ours to win wars." Yuna looked at him. "That's a good line, sir. Mind if I use it?" "Be my guest." The next morning, Yuna gathered the crew in the main hangar bay. 400 men and women in dark uniforms stood at attention. Engineers, gunners, medical staff, Marines, pilots. All of them had heard the mockery. All of them felt the sting of being dismissed. "I know what you've heard," Yuna told them, her voice carrying across the bay. "The aliens think we're slow. They think we're outdated. They think we're going to be a burden." She paused, looking at the faces before her. "They're judging us by their standards, but we're not them. We don't run. We don't dodge. We stand. We endure. And when the smoke clears, we're still there, still fighting, still bringing our people home." Lieutenant Hyun Lee, the chief engineer, spoke up. "The Steadfast can take more punishment than any 3 of their ships combined." "Exactly," Yuna agreed. "Let them laugh. Let them make their jokes. When the fighting starts, they'll understand. This ship wasn't built to look pretty. She was built to be the wall that doesn't break." Cheers erupted from the crew, not loud or boisterous, but firm and determined. These were people who knew their ship. They knew what she could do. That night, as the fleet prepared to jump to the first defensive position, Taman sat in his captain's chair on the bridge. Around him, his officers worked at their stations. Ensign Minji Cho at weapons, Ensign Doyen Nam at the helm, Lieutenant Ji-hoon Kwan at communications. Dr. Hana Shin had medical prepared. Warrant Officer Woo Jin Baek had his Marines ready. They were ready. The Steadfast was ready. Let the others laugh while they could. The alert sirens woke Captain Taman from a light sleep. He was on the bridge in less than 2 minutes, still fastening his uniform jacket. The main screen showed a tactical display of the Corvin system, and it was painted with enemy contacts. "Report," he ordered, sliding into his captain's chair. Lieutenant Ji-hoon looked up from the communications station. "Vrelix's battle fleet detected approaching Corvin 3. Count is 18 heavy cruisers and support craft. The colony has 2 million civilians." "Where's the Allied fleet?" Taman asked. "Jumping in now, sir." Space around them rippled as ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The Allied fleet materialized in a loose formation. 20 sleek alien warships, their hulls gleaming, their engines bright. And there, moving slower than the rest, was the Steadfast. Commander Yuna stepped onto the bridge, her hair still damp from a quick shower. "The Vrelix aren't wasting time. They're already moving toward the planet." On the tactical display, red markers showed the enemy fleet in a tight formation. They were moving fast, their course direct and aggressive. The Allied ships began to spread out, using their superior speed to try to flank the enemy. "All ships, this is High Commander Silith," the insectoid commander's voice came through. "Engage at will. Use your speed advantage. Keep them off balance. The battle began like a dance. The alien ships darted in and out, firing energy weapons and missiles. The Vreliks responded with their own barrage. Ships twisted and turned, dodging and weaving through space. It was beautiful and terrible to watch. The Steadfast moved forward at her steady pace, .3 light speed. She couldn't match the graceful maneuvers of the other ships. She just kept moving forward, solid and determined. "Sir, we're falling behind the formation," Doyen reported from the helm. "Maintain course and speed," Taman replied calmly. "Take us to coordinates marked Delta 7. Yuna looked at those coordinates on her screen and nodded slightly. It was a position between the planet and the main battle. Not flashy, but strategic. The battle raged around them. A Quellan cruiser took a hit and spun away, trailing atmosphere. An Antharian frigate destroyed a Vrelix destroyer with a precise shot to its reactor. The fight was fast and chaotic. Then something changed. 3 Vrelix destroyers broke away from the main battle. They turned toward the Steadfast, their engines burning bright as they accelerated. "Enemy ships breaking off," Minji announced from the weapons station. "They're targeting us." "Of course they are," Yuna muttered. "We look like the easy kill." Taman watched the 3 enemy ships approaching. They were fast, much faster than his ship. Their weapons were hot, ready to fire. He could imagine the enemy commanders seeing the slow, bulky human vessel and thinking they could destroy it quickly before rejoining the main fight. "All hands! Battle stations!" Taman announced. His voice was calm and steady, the same tone he'd used to order coffee. "This is not a drill. Prepare for combat." Throughout the ship, crew members scrambled to their positions. In engineering, Lieutenant Hyun checked the power distribution systems. In medical, Dr. Hana prepared her trauma bays. In the marine quarters, Wu Jin had his soldiers checking their weapons in case of boarding. "Range to enemy ships?" Taman asked. 15,000 kilometers and closing fast," Minji replied. Her hands moved over her console, bringing weapon systems online. "They'll be in firing range in 90 seconds. "All power to forward shields," Taman ordered. "Hyun, I need the railguns ready." From engineering, Hyun's voice came through. "Railguns are hot, Captain. Ammunition fed and ready." "Minji, I want firing solutions on all 3 targets." The young weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, they're moving too fast. Conventional targeting won't track them properly." "We're not using conventional targeting," Taman said. "Engage pattern Delta 7. Yuna smiled slightly. She knew what was coming. The 3 Vrelix destroyers came in fast and confident. They spread out, planning to hit the Steadfast from 3 angles at once. Their energy weapons charged, ready to tear through what they assumed was weak human shielding. "Enemy opening fire," Ji-hoon reported. Blue energy beams lanced out from the Vrelix ships. They struck the Steadfast's forward shields and splashed across them like water on stone. The ship barely shuddered. "Shields holding at 92%, reported the tactical officer. "Return fire," Taman ordered quietly. The Steadfast didn't try to dodge. She didn't spin or weave. She just sat there in space like a mountain and brought her weapons to bear. The railguns spoke. Not energy weapons that needed time to recharge, not missiles that could be shot down. Solid metal slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed by magnetic force. 60 guns firing in a calculated pattern. The first Vrelix destroyer tried to dodge. It twisted gracefully to the side, exactly as its pilot had been trained, but the railgun slug wasn't aimed at where the ship was. It was aimed at where the ship would be. The slug caught the destroyer in the engine section and tore through it like paper. The ship broke apart in a flash of light. "Target 1 destroyed," Minji reported, her voice shaking with excitement. The second destroyer had more time to react. It changed its pattern, trying to be unpredictable, but the Steadfast's targeting computer wasn't guessing. It was calculating. 12 railguns fired together. 3 slugs missed. 9 hit. The destroyer's shields collapsed and its hull ruptured in multiple places. It spun away, dead in space. "Target 2 neutralized," Minji said. The third destroyer's captain realized what was happening. He tried to retreat, pushing his engines to maximum, but he'd come in too close. The Steadfast's massive power core meant she could fire continuously without overheating. Railguns fired again and again. The destroyer's shields held for 3 shots, then 4, then failed. The 5th shot punched through the bridge. The 6th destroyed the reactor. "Target 3 destroyed," Minji confirmed. The entire engagement had lasted less than 4 minutes. On the bridge, the crew sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then Hyun's voice came through from engineering. "All systems nominal, Captain. Power core at 85% capacity. We can keep fighting." Taemin allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Rotate us 40 degrees starboard. Let's help our allies." The Steadfast turned with her characteristic slow grace. The main battle was still raging. The Allied ships were faster and more maneuverable, but they were taking damage. Their hit-and-run tactics worked, but they couldn't stay in a prolonged fight. The human warship changed that equation. Moving into position, the Steadfast became what she was designed to be, a stable firing platform. While the alien ships darted around, the Steadfast sat firm and poured fire into the enemy formation. Her railguns didn't need perfect hits. Volume of fire was the strategy, dozens of slugs filling space, making it impossible for enemy ships to maneuver safely. A Quellan cruiser, shields failing and hull breached, limped toward the Steadfast. Taemin ordered his point defense systems to extend coverage. The human ship's weapons shot down incoming missiles targeting the damaged cruiser, buying it time to retreat. An Antharian frigate, out of ammunition, requested support. Taemin ordered supply drones launched. Small automated craft carried missile reloads through the battle, reaching the Allied ship and resupplying it under fire. The tide of battle shifted. The Vrelics had expected fast, fragile opponents. They'd built their tactics around speed and maneuver. But now there was a ship that didn't run, a ship that just stood there and absorbed hits while dealing out punishment, a ship that supported others while never backing down. One by one, the Vrelics' ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. The Allied fleet pursued, their confidence restored. When the last enemy contact fled the system, High Commander Silith's voice came through on all channels. "Cease fire! Enemy has retreated! All ships report status." As the reports came in, Taemin listened to the damage counts. Several Allied ships were heavily damaged. The Quellan cruiser would need weeks in dock. 2 Antharian frigates had lost crew members. Everyone had battle scars. "UHSN Steadfast report status," Silith requested. "Shields at 40%, Taemin replied. "Minor hull damage to sections 7 and 12. No casualties. All weapon systems operational. Ready to continue if needed." There was a long pause. "Captain Kang," Silith finally said, her clicking voice sounding different somehow. "Your ship performed well. Very well." "Thank you, Commander," Taemin said simply. As the fleet regrouped, Yuna leaned close to Taemin. "They're not laughing anymore, sir." Through the window, they could see the alien ships. Some of them were dipping their sensor arrays as they passed. A salute. A gesture of respect. "No," Taemin agreed. "They're not." The strategy room at Nexus Prime Station was filled with projections and data streams. Captain Taemin stood at ease while alien commanders studied battle footage from the Corvin engagement. The recording played in slow motion, showing the destruction of the 3 Vrelics destroyers in precise detail. "Pause there," said Council Member Pelcor, an Antharian with silver skin and large black eyes. The image froze on a frame showing a railgun slug tearing through a destroyer's shields. "How did your targeting systems predict the evasion pattern?" "We didn't predict it," Taemin explained. We calculated the most likely responses based on standard military training. Most pilots follow similar patterns when dodging. The computer generates a probability field and fires into it. Ambassador Vekthar leaned forward, his scaled hands folded. He looked different than he had in the council chamber a week ago. Less amused, more thoughtful. But your weapons are ballistic, physical projectiles. We abandoned such primitive systems centuries ago. With respect, Ambassador, they're not primitive. They're practical. Commander Yuna stepped forward with her data pad. Energy weapons need time to recharge. Missiles can be intercepted. Railgun slugs are just mass and velocity, simple physics, and we can fire them continuously as long as we have ammunition. High Commander Silith clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Your ship absorbed significant damage in the battle, yet you reported no casualties and minimal system failures. How? Armor, Taman said simply. The Steadfast has 60 centimeters of composite armor on critical sections. Our shields are secondary defense. Most modern ships rely entirely on shields and make their hulls thin to save weight for speed. We do the opposite. A holographic display showed a cross-section comparison. The Steadfast's thick hull was obvious next to the sleek, thin hulls of the alien vessels. Your ship is 60% armor and ammunition by mass, noted Pelcor. That's why you're slow. Yes, sir. Inefficient, Vekthar muttered, but he didn't sound as convinced as before. Different, Yuna corrected gently. Human ships are built for extended engagements. We can fight for days without resupply. Our ammunition stores are massive. Our power core generates 3 times what we need for propulsion because the excess powers weapons and shields simultaneously. A new figure entered the strategy room. Admiral Somin Ryu wore the stars of a fleet commander on her collar. She was 53, silver-haired, and had the quiet confidence of someone who had spent 30 years in space combat. She was the highest-ranking human officer in the sector. Forgive my interruption, Admiral Somin said. I wanted to observe the briefing. Admiral, welcome, Silith gestured to the displays. We were discussing the human approach to warship design. It's quite different from ours. Fundamentally different, Somin agreed, moving to stand beside Taman. May I explain our philosophy? The alien commanders nodded. Your species evolved in space or on low-gravity worlds, Somin began. Your natural instinct is to move, to fly, to escape danger through speed. It makes sense that you build ships the same way. She touched her data pad and a new image appeared. Earth rotating slowly in blue and green. Humans evolved on a heavy-gravity world. When danger came, we couldn't fly away. We had to stand and fight. We built walls. We made armor. We learned to endure. She paused. That's what we put into our ships. Not speed, not elegance, endurance. But warfare in space requires mobility, Vekthar protested. Does it? Yuna asked. Or does it require presence? A fast ship can raid and retreat, but it can't hold a position. It can't protect something that cannot move, like a colony or a space station. Silith's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign she was thinking hard. You're saying your ships are designed to be defensive? Defensive and offensive, Taman corrected. We can hold a position and deal massive damage to anyone who tries to take it from us. In the Corvin battle, the Steadfast destroyed 3 destroyers and provided covering fire for the entire fleet, all while taking hits that would have destroyed lighter vessels. Admiral Somin pulled up more data. A human ship can fight continuously for 72 hours before needing resupply. Our crews are trained for extended combat operations. Our medical facilities can handle mass casualties. Our damage control teams can seal breaches and repair systems while under fire. Your reactor output is excessive, noted Pelcor. For propulsion, yes, Somin agreed, but not for combat. We can fire every weapon system simultaneously while maintaining full shields and running all ship systems. Most ships have to choose. They can't do everything at once. The room fell quiet as the alien commanders absorbed this information. They watched the battle footage again, this time with new understanding. The Steadfast wasn't failing to dodge. She was choosing not to. She was choosing to be the rock that the enemy broke against. "How many ships do you have like the Steadfast?" Silith asked. "Currently operational?" "6," Admiral Soman replied. "We have 4 more under construction. They'll be ready in 3 months." Vekthar stood and walked to the holographic display. He studied the human ship from all angles. "You mentioned holding a position. What if you had to hold a critical choke point? A place where the enemy had to come to you?" "That's exactly what we designed them for," Soman said. The Draxian ambassador looked at Silith. "The Helios Gate." Silith's compound eyes widened slightly. "That's a bold suggestion. What is the Helios Gate?" Taman asked. Pelkor activated a star map. A narrow passage appeared between 2 massive nebulae. "It's the only practical route to the core worlds from this sector. If the Vrelics take it, they have a clear path to 12 colony systems and 3 major industrial centers." "Intelligence suggests they're planning a major push," Silith added. "Soon, perhaps within days. They'll send everything they have to break through." "And if they succeed?" Yuna asked. "Then we lose the war," Vekthar said bluntly. "The core worlds cannot be evacuated in time. Billions would be at risk." Admiral Soman looked at the star map, then at Taman. "Captain, the Steadfast is the most battle-ready human ship in the sector. The others are on patrol or undergoing maintenance." "How many ships can we put at the Helios Gate?" Taman asked. 6 of ours plus the Steadfast," Silith replied. "The rest of the fleet is spread across 3 other fronts. We can't pull them back without exposing other systems." 7 ships against a full Vrelix battle fleet," Yuna said quietly. "What will they bring?" "Intelligence estimates 40 ships minimum," Pelkor said. "Possibly more." The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. 7 against 40 or more. Even with the Allied ship's speed and the Steadfast's firepower, those were terrible odds. "Captain Kang," Silith said formally, "we're offering you field command of the Helios Gate defense. Your ship will be the anchor. The other ships will support with their speed and maneuverability. It's a strategy that plays to both strengths." "Why me?" Taman asked. "Because you understand your ship," Soman said. "And because, after watching that battle footage, every commander in this room knows that if anyone can hold an impossible position, it's the Steadfast." Taman looked at Yuna. She nodded slightly. He thought about his crew, 400 people who had trained for exactly this kind of fight, who had proven themselves at Corvan, who trusted their ship and their captain. "We'll do it," Taman said. "Give us the gate. We'll hold it." "You understand the odds?" Vekthar asked. "I understand what happens if we don't try," Taman replied. "Billions of lives. That's what we're protecting. That's worth standing for." Admiral Soman placed a hand on his shoulder. "Humanity learned warfare in Gravity Wells, Captain. We didn't have the luxury of running away. So we learned to stand and deliver. Show them what that means." The briefing continued for another hour, covering tactical details and communication protocols. But the decision was made. The Steadfast would go to the Helios Gate. She would position herself in the narrow passage between the nebulae. And she would not move, no matter what came at her. Later, back aboard his ship, Taman stood on the bridge and looked at his crew. They'd heard about the mission. They knew the odds. Not one had requested transfer. "Helm, set course for the Helios Gate," he ordered. "Aye, sir," Doyun replied. "Course laid in." "Engineering?" I need you to inspect every system, every weapon, every seal. We're going to need everything working perfectly." "Already on it, Captain," Hyun responded. "Medical, prepare for heavy casualties." Dr. Hana's voice was calm. "We're ready, Captain." "Marines, boarding protocols." Woo Jin's response was immediate. "Sir." "Yes, sir." Taemin sat in his captain's chair and took a deep breath. Through the window he could see the stars. Somewhere out there the Vrelix fleet was gathering. Soon they would come. And when they did, they would find the Steadfast waiting. "Take us out," he ordered. The ship moved forward, slow and steady, heading toward the battle that would define them all. The Helios Gate was beautiful, in a deadly way. Two massive nebulae flanked a passage barely 10,000 kilometers wide. Radiation from the nebulae made long-range sensors useless. Navigation was tricky, but for a defensive position, it was perfect. Any fleet trying to pass through had to come straight down the middle. The Steadfast sat right in the center of that passage. Behind her, 6 Allied ships took up supporting positions, 3 Quellan cruisers on the flanks, 2 Antharian frigates for quick response, 1 Draxian battleship as backup, 7 ships total. Now they waited. Captain Taemin walked through his ship during those waiting hours. In engineering, Lieutenant Hyun and her teams checked every system 3 times. Power distribution, weapons feeds, backup generators, everything had to be perfect. "How are we looking?" Taemin asked. Hyun wiped grease from her hands. She was 32 but looked younger. Her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Power core is running at optimal. I've routed backup feeds to every critical system. Even if we lose main power, we can keep fighting." "Good work." In the medical bay, Dr. Hana supervised her staff. The 41-year-old doctor had served on 3 ships before the Steadfast. She'd seen combat before. Beds were prepared, medical supplies organized, trauma teams assigned. "Are you ready, doctor?" Taemin asked. Hana looked up from a medical kit. Her expression was calm but serious. "I'm ready, Captain. I hope I won't need to be, but I'm ready." The Marine quarters were busy with final preparations. Warrant Officer Woo Jin gathered his soldiers, checking armor and weapons. The 38-year-old Master-at-Arms had fought in boarding actions before. He knew what to expect if Vrelix tried to take the ship from the inside. "Marines ready, sir," Woo Jin reported when he saw Taemin. "If they try to board us, they'll regret it." On the bridge, the command crew maintained their stations. Commander Yuna studied tactical projections. Lieutenant Ji-hoon monitored all frequencies. Ensign Doyeon kept the ship steady. Ensign Minji had her weapons ready. 12 hours passed, then 24. The waiting was its own kind of torture. Then the sensors screamed. "Contact!" Ji-hoon shouted. "Multiple ships dropping from FTL at the edge of sensor range." Taemin was in his chair instantly. "How many?" "Counting. 20, 30. Ji-hoon's voice rose. "Sir, I'm reading 42 Vrelix warships. They brought everything." On the main screen, red markers appeared. 42 enemy ships in a massive formation, capital ships, cruisers, destroyers, and at the center, one massive vessel that dwarfed all the others. "That's the Death of Hope," Yuna said quietly. "Their flagship battle carrier. It's commanded by Warlord Krev himself." "All ships, battle stations," Taemin ordered over the fleet channel. "Remember the plan. We hold this position, no matter what." The Vrelix fleet advanced slowly, almost cautiously. They knew this was a choke point. They knew defenders would be waiting, but when their sensors showed only 7 ships, their advance became bolder. "They're going to try to overwhelm us with numbers," Yuna said. "Let them try," Taemin replied. He opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, this is the captain. In a few minutes, we're going to be in the fight of our lives. I know the odds." "You know the odds, but I also know this ship, and I know this crew. We were built for this. We were trained for this. Behind us are billions of people who are counting on us to hold this line. So that's what we're going to do. Stand fast, stand together, and bring each other home. Bridge out." The Vrelic's fleet came within range. For a moment, space was silent. Then 42 enemy ships opened fire. The universe turned into light and fury. Energy beams lanced across space. Missiles streaked forward in swarms. The Steadfast's shields flared brilliant blue as they absorbed the incoming fire. The ship shuddered under the impact. "Return fire!" Taman ordered. "All weapons, maximum rate." 60 railguns spoke as one. The sound vibrated through the hull, a deep drumming thunder. Missiles launched in volleys. Point defense systems created a web of fire. The Steadfast became a fortress of flame. Allied ships darted in and out of the battle using their speed. The Quellan cruisers hammered targets on the flanks. The Antharian frigates hunted damaged enemy ships. The Draxian battleship added its heavy weapons to the Steadfast's barrage. But 42 ships against 7 was an impossible equation. An hour into the battle, the first critical damage hit. A Vrelic's missile slipped past point defense and struck the Steadfast's starboard side. Armor cracked. Hull plating tore. Section 7 lost atmosphere in an explosive decompression. "Seal Section 7, Taman ordered. In Damage Control Central, Petty Officer Nari Song and her team scrambled. 29 years old and brilliant with emergency repairs, Nari led her people into the damaged section. They worked in vacuum suits, welding plates, and sealing breaches while the ship continued to fight around them. "Section 7 sealed, Captain," Nari reported, her breath heavy. "We lost 3 people, but the breach is contained. 3 dead. The first casualties. Taman felt each name like a weight, but there was no time to mourn. The battle continued, 3 hours in. The Steadfast's shields collapsed. Without that protective bubble, every hit struck armor directly. The thick composite plating held, but slowly it was being worn away. Hull temperature rose as energy weapons scorched the surface. "Port armor at 60%, reported the damage control officer. "Reroute power from non-critical systems to structural integrity fields," Hyun ordered from engineering. "We can take more hits if we reinforce the weak points." 4 hours. One of the Quellan cruisers took a devastating hit and limped out of formation, trailing debris. 5 hours. An Antharian frigate exploded when its reactor was breached. The defenders were down to 6 ships now. 6 hours. The Steadfast was taking fire from multiple directions. Railgun ammunition was at 70%, missiles at 60%. The crew was exhausted, but nobody stopped working. Lieutenant Jihoon coordinated communications, keeping all ships linked. Doyen held the Steadfast steady despite damaged maneuvering thrusters. Minji fired weapons with mathematical precision, making every shot count. 7 hours. The Vrelic's battle carrier. Death of Hope moved forward, its massive guns charging. Taman watched it come, knowing that those weapons could potentially crack even the Steadfast's heavy armor. "Sir, the battle carrier is launching small craft," Minji reported. "Boarding pods, dozens of them." "Marines prepare to repel boarders," Taman ordered. The pods hit the hull like a drumbeat. Cutting torches began to burn through. In the corridors, Wu Jin and his Marines took positions. When the first Vrelic's soldiers burst through, they met coordinated fire. The fighting was brutal and close range, humans and aliens struggling in narrow passages. "Marines holding on decks 5 and 6, Wu Jin reported, his voice strained. "Taking casualties but holding." 8 hours. Port armor breached in multiple places. Starboard armor at 40%. Ammunition at 50%. Casualties mounting. Dr. Hana and her medical teams worked frantically, saving everyone they could. 9 hours. The Death of Hope fired its main weapons. Massive energy beams struck the Steadfast dead center. Armor melted. Internal bulkheads buckled. The lights flickered. For a terrible moment, Taman thought this was the end. But the ship held. Barely, but she held. "All Allied ships, this is Steadfast," Una transmitted. "We're running low on ammunition. Requesting status." The responses came back. The remaining ships were almost empty. They'd been fighting for 9 hours straight. Everyone was at their limit. "Negative on fall back," Taman said, when one Quellan captain suggested retreat. "We hold this line. Steadfast will share her reserves." Automated drones launched from the human ship, carrying ammunition to the Allied vessels. It was dangerous, flying supply drones through a battle. But it worked. The Allied ships began firing again with renewed intensity. 10 hours, 11, 12. The battle had become a test of pure endurance. The Vreliks kept coming, kept firing, kept pressing. The defenders kept holding, kept shooting, kept fighting. 13 hours. The Steadfast's hull was glowing red from absorbed heat. Internal temperatures were rising despite cooling systems running at maximum. Crew members worked in environments that were barely survivable. "Captain, we can't take much more," Hyun warned from engineering. Her face was covered in sweat and soot. "Hull integrity is critical in 4 sections. One more concentrated hit and we could suffer catastrophic failure." The Vrelik's warlord Krev seemed to sense victory. All 40 remaining enemy ships began to focus their fire on the Steadfast. They would break the human ship and then sweep aside the smaller defenders. The barrage was apocalyptic. Every weapon in the enemy fleet targeted one ship. The Steadfast shook like she was coming apart. Consoles exploded on the bridge. Fires broke out. The main screen cracked. The ship screamed in protest. Taman gripped his chair as the deck tilted. Blood ran down his face from a piece of shrapnel that had caught his forehead. Around him, his crew fought to keep their stations operational. Una had a broken arm but still worked her console one-handed. Jihoon was bleeding from cuts across his chest but kept transmitting coordinates. Minji's station was sparking and failing, but she kept firing the guns. "Hull integrity at 15%, someone shouted. "Reactor containment at risk," Yun warned. "All hands. Brace for—" Taman began. Then space tore open behind them. 4 massive ships dropped from FTL travel. Human ships. Fresh, undamaged, fully armed Steadfast-class warships. And at their head was Admiral Soman Ryu's flagship. "This is Admiral Ryu to all ships. Relief has arrived. All units, engage the enemy." The 4 fresh warships charged into battle with full ammunition stores and full power. They'd heard their sister ship was fighting for her life. They'd come as fast as they could, and now they were angry. The Vrelik's fleet had been fighting for 13 hours. Their crews were tired. Their ammunition stores were depleting. They thought they were minutes from victory, that one more push would break the stubborn human ship and open the way to the core worlds. Then 4 fresh warships arrived. 4 ships that looked exactly like the battered vessel they'd been trying to destroy. Ships with full shields, full ammunition, and crews that were angry. Captain Taman watched on his cracked screen as Admiral Soman Ryu's flagship, the Relentless, positioned itself beside the damaged Steadfast. The other 3 human ships spread out, forming a wall of steel and firepower. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Ryu." The calm voice came through damaged speakers. "Show them what we do to enemies who threaten our people." The 4 fresh ships opened fire as one. The sound was like thunder multiplied by 4. Where the Steadfast had been holding alone, now 5 human warships created an overlapping field of destruction. Railgun fire filled space with metal. Missiles streaked in coordinated volleys. The defensive line became an offensive wall. The Vrelik's fleet, already exhausted from the long battle, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that was not only unbroken, but reinforced. The psychological impact was devastating. Warlord Krev, commanding from the Death of Hope, tried to rally his fleet. He ordered a concentrated attack on the fresh ships, thinking he could damage them as he had damaged the Steadfast. but the human vessels moved in formation, supporting each other. When one ship's shields weakened, it rotated and another took its place. They fought like one creature with 5 bodies. Commander Yuna, her broken arm held in a makeshift sling, coordinated with the other ships. Despite her pain, despite the exhaustion, she was brilliant. She directed fire where it would hurt most. She identified weak points in enemy formations. She turned the human fleet into a precision instrument of war. "Target the enemy flagship," Admiral Soman ordered. "Concentrate all fire." 5 human warships turned their attention to the death of hope. The massive battle carrier had seemed invincible before, but now it faced firepower it couldn't withstand. Its shields collapsed under the barrage. Armor plates cracked and peeled away. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull. Warlord Krev made one final desperate move. He launched every boarding pod he had left, sending hundreds of soldiers toward the human ships. The pods scattered in space, each seeking a target. On the Steadfast, Warrant Officer Wu Jin and his Marines had been fighting boarders for hours. They were exhausted, wounded, running low on ammunition. When sensors showed another wave of pods incoming, several Marines looked at each other with tired eyes. "Load up," Wu Jin ordered quietly. "One more time. We hold. That's what we do." The new wave of boarders hit, but this time Marines from the fresh ships teleported over to help. The fighting remained brutal, but the defenders had reinforcements now. Inch by inch, deck by deck, they pushed the Vrelix soldiers back. In the main battle, the tide had completely turned. The human ships, working together, were systematically destroying the Vrelix fleet. The Allied ships, resupplied and reinvigorated, joined the assault. The enemy formation broke apart. Ships began to flee individually, desperately trying to escape. The Death of Hope, damaged beyond repair, tried to withdraw. Admiral Somin gave chase, her relentless hammering the battle carrier with every weapon. Finally, with its engines destroyed and its hull breached in dozens of places, the flagship surrendered. "All Vrelix ships, cease fire and surrender," Admiral Soman transmitted. "This battle is over." One by one, the remaining enemy ships stopped shooting. 31 Vrelix vessels were destroyed. The other 11 surrendered. It was a total defeat. On the bridge of the Steadfast, Captain Taman sat back in his chair. His face was covered in blood from his head wound. His uniform was torn and burned. Around him, his bridge crew looked like survivors of a disaster, which, in a way, they were. "Status report," he said quietly. The numbers came in slowly. 47 crew members dead, 134 wounded. Hull integrity at 12%. Main power at 40%. 23 hull breaches sealed but not repaired. Ammunition at 16%. The Steadfast was barely holding together, but she was still there, still in position, still between the enemy and the core worlds. "Sir, Admiral Ryu is requesting to come aboard," Jehun reported. "Grant permission," Taman said. He tried to stand and nearly fell. Yuna caught him with her good arm. "Easy, sir," she said. "Medical team is on the way." But Taman shook his head. "I need to be on my feet when the Admiral arrives." Dr. Hana came to the bridge herself. She looked exhausted, her surgical gown stained with blood from hours of emergency operations. She took one look at Taman and immediately started treating his head wound. "You need surgery," she said bluntly. "Later," Taman replied. After. Admiral Soman Ryu arrived with a small escort. She walked through the damaged corridors of the Steadfast, seeing the destruction firsthand. Scorched walls, emergency lights, crew members too tired to even salute properly. She found Taman on the bridge, standing despite his wounds. "Captain Kang," she said formally. Then her expression softened. "Taman, you did it. You held." "We did it, ma'am," Taman replied. All of us." He gestured to his bridge crew, to the view of the battle-scarred ship. The Steadfast and her crew. We held the line. "For 13 hours against impossible odds," Soman said. She looked around the bridge. "I'm recommending every member of your crew for commendations, and I'm recommending you for the Council's highest honor." Taman started to protest, but Somin held up a hand. "Don't argue with me, Captain. You earned it. This ship earned it. You stopped them. You broke their offensive. Because of you, billions of people are safe." News of the Battle of Helios Gate spread quickly. Within hours, the entire Galactic Council knew what had happened. A single human ship, mocked for being slow and primitive, had held a critical position for 13 hours against overwhelming force, had absorbed punishment that would have destroyed any other vessel, had refused to break, refused to retreat, refused to fail. The Steadfast was towed back to Nexus Prime Station. She moved slowly through space, accompanied by the 4 ships that had saved her. As they approached the station, something unexpected happened. Every ship in the sector formed up in 2 lines, creating a corridor. Military vessels and civilian craft alike. Quellan cruisers and Antharian frigates, Draxian battleships and merchant haulers. As the Steadfast passed between them, each ship extended its sensor arrays in salute. It was silent, profound. A gesture of respect from those who understood what the human ship had endured. On the bridge, Taman watched through the cracked screen. His crew stood beside him, wounded and exhausted, but standing. Commander Yuna had tears in her eyes. Lieutenant Hyun stood proudly, despite burns on her arms. Ensign Minji looked around in awe. Dr. Hana smiled softly. Wu Jin and his Marines stood at attention. "They understand now," Yuna said quietly. "Yes," Taman agreed. "They do." The Galactic Council held an emergency session. Ambassador Vekthar stood before the assembly, his scaled face serious. "I owe the human delegation an apology," he said clearly. "I mocked Captain Kang's ship. I dismissed their contribution. I was wrong." He turned to where the humans sat. "Your ship saved my homeworld, my family. Everything I care about lies beyond the Helios Gate. If you had not held that line—" He stopped, emotion breaking through his normally controlled demeanor. "Thank you." Other ambassadors spoke. High Commander Silith praised the human tactics. Council member Pelkor suggested integrating human engineering principles into allied ship designs. One by one, the species that had laughed at the slow human warship now asked to learn from it. 6 months passed. The Steadfast was rebuilt in dock, surrounded by construction equipment and work crews. Her keel was intact. Her reactor remained strong. She was damaged, but not broken. Like her crew, she could be repaired. Captain Taman visited the ship daily during repairs. He watched as new armor was installed, as weapons were replaced, as scarred sections were cut away and new ones welded in place. The workers treated the ship with reverence now, knowing what she had done. The Vrelix Empire, shaken by their defeat, agreed to peace negotiations. They had lost their best fleet and their flagship. Their warlord was a prisoner. Their expansion had been stopped cold by a ship they thought would be an easy target. Other human warships were completing construction, 10 new vessels of the Steadfast class. Humanity's role in the Galactic Council had transformed. No longer newcomers to be dismissed, they were now recognized as essential defenders. On the day the Steadfast was ready to return to service, a ceremony was held. The entire crew gathered in the main hangar bay. Admiral Soman presented medals and commendations. Captain Taman received the Council's Star of Valor, but he immediately dedicated it to the 47 crew members who had died in the battle. Dr. Hana read the names aloud. 47 people who had served with honor, who had held their posts until the end, who had given everything so others could live. The ceremony was solemn and emotional. When it was over, Taman stood before his crew. 400 people, some still showing scars from the battle. New faces had joined to replace those lost, but the core remained. These were his people. "The Steadfast is ready to fly again," he said simply. "Command has asked if we're ready to return to duty. I told them that's not my decision. It's yours. Every member of this crew has the right to transfer. No one will think less of you. You've already proven everything you needed to prove." The crew looked at each other. Then Lieutenant Yun spoke up. "Permission to speak, sir?" "Granted." "I helped rebuild this ship, Captain. Every plate, every wire, every system. She's better than she was before." Hyun smiled. "Besides, I want to see what else she can do." Commander Yuna stepped forward, her arm fully healed now. "The Steadfast held the line when everyone said it was impossible. I want to be here for the next impossible thing." One by one, crew members spoke, engineers and gunners, medical staff and Marines. Not one person requested transfer. They all wanted to stay. This was their ship. This was their family. Ambassador Vekthar came aboard that evening. He walked through the corridors with Taman, seeing the new construction and the memorial plaques for the fallen. "Your ship is still slow, Captain," the Draxian ambassador said. "Yes, sir," Taman agreed. "Still not as maneuverable as our vessels." "No, sir." Vekthar stopped and looked at him. "But when we need a door that won't break, we call you. When we need a wall that won't fall, we call you. When we need someone to stand when everyone else runs, we call you." "That's what we do," Taman said simply. The Steadfast left dock the next morning. She moved at her characteristic slow pace, solid and steady. Behind her, 6 other human warships fell into formation. Ahead of her, the galaxy waited. They didn't build ships to be admired. They built them to bring their people home. And the Steadfast, scarred but unbroken, would keep doing exactly that.